everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushalmehra. All right, today's podcast is called Politics in Kashmir post Article 370. Now, Sunanda had come a few months ago on the podcast and we were discussing the Kashmiri genocide denialism. Now, a lot of things have changed in Kashmir since then. Article 370 is gone, and there have been a few interesting discussions that have been happening in the Kashmiri political landscape. So, I reached out to Sunanda and she's been kind enough to agree. So, Sunanda, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Always good to be back with you, Kushal. It's wonderful to be talking here and being, given space more than 30 seconds.
Yes, I'll try my best to cut you off.
It's a luxury to be able to speak more than 30 seconds. So I feel privileged.
Okay, Sunanda, फिर चालू ऐसे करते हैं. Let us maybe get this. So, what is it in terms of how politics has been going on since, let's say, 2018? Um, what do we see changes or things? The more things change, the more they remain the same. What is your sense in terms of? And when I say this in the political sense, not in the social sense. Social sense हमको पता है, मगर political sense में क्या हो रहा
Yeah, so let me give you a little bit of, overview of what is going on. Before 2018, as you and the viewers might know, is 2018, just to recap, 2018 is when PDP and BJP, that alliance, that fell apart, and the state was put under then governor's rule. So this happened in June of 2018. And before this, Mufti Muhammad Said, as everyone knows, in the election before that, nobody had won majority. Mufti Muhammad Said had a few more seats, and um, National Conference was had one less seats than that they had last time, and BJP had won a good number of seats in Jammu. So the way it was going was that PDP had more seats in Kashmir Valley, and BJP had more seats in Jammu, so they formed an alliance. Us time pe everybody called it an alliance of North Pole and South Pole. It indeed was. I went public about my displeasure about it, and I wrote about it, and I said, this is something that will not work just because of who PDP is, what they stand for, and even if these two come together, it will be very difficult to for two of them to work. Of course, we had no idea then that there was what was coming up, the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. So none of us knew what was going on. So even though my assumption now, and this is post facto, my assumption now is, and nobody will ever know, but my thing is that BJP got into this alliance because they really wanted to understand the workings of the bureaucracy and the government and everything, because BJP had never been in the power. It had always been out of power. It had never been even a stakeholder anywhere. So to be able to, so I'm sure powers to be knew what was going on, and they somehow knew that they had to get into the system. So I think that agenda of alliance or whatever, of which we were very, very unhappy about at that time, it was primarily an exercise to sort of get into the system, so that when Article 370 had to be revoked, and they would need understanding of the state machinery to be able to execute that. It was a huge thing to be executed. So in retrospect, one understands why that alliance had happened, but politically it was a no-brainer. Everyone knew that they were never going to run a government together. In any case, in 2018, BJP walked out of the thing, and Mehbooba had to resign, and who had come into power after her father had passed away. So once that was done, then from 2018 to 2019, there was governor's rule, and for 6 months, and then president's rule, the way. And then in 2000, August 5th, 2019, as everyone knows, we had abrogation of 370. So a year and a half before abrogation of 370, there was no political process had come to a standstill. And after that, I think there was no intention of starting the political process anytime soon after August 5th, because I think the idea was that everything needs to settle down, because once you come out of a major surgery, then you need a lot of recuperation time. So I think from August 2019 to this time, it was a sort of recuperation time. They were trying to work on sort of normalizing everything so that people get used to that major shock that had happened. And once that is done now, I think the political process is starting now. Before 2018, before this current process was stopped, the political landscape of Jammu and Kashmir and it was an oligarchical landscape. It was a proper oligarchy. The Article 370 had ensured that Jammu and Kashmir becomes an oligarchy. So the power was between two families. It was either National Conference by Abdullahs or PDP, Mufti Muhammad Saeed. And PDP also came late into the game. PDP was formed by Mufti Muhammad Saeed, who was a congressman for a long time, and then he had joined Janata Dal, and then he was a party hopper, and then finally he started PDP. And PDP's I think when PDP was sort of given a kind of acceptance by then powers in Delhi, it was also to have a challenge to National Conference, because till then the power rested really in the family of Abdullahs since 1947 and even before that. And they have been a very influential family in Kashmiri politics. PDP at least gave a challenge to them, was a challenge to their politics, but PDP had its own problems. PDP is a soft jihadi party, it's a soft separatist party. That was the place where it put itself in the landscape. So if they had to stand against National Conference, remember what the politics of Jammu and Kashmir was at that time. Jammu was not even in the part of political process, and we'll talk about Jammu when we come, because their issues need to be talked about separately. But Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh at that point was always governed from Kashmir's prism. Everything was about Kashmir, which I have a huge problem with. But anyway, that was changed, and these two political parties, they just played kho, and they were playing this game, and there was really no chance for anybody to come in. After 2019, I think the government did try a lot that some other political parties should come up. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए once the elections are held, फिर power उन्हीं के पास चला जाए, तो then what have we achieved really? These two people are they keep making noises about boycotting elections or something, but let me tell you, on this podcast, nobody is going to. They are either going to fight themselves or they're going to fight through proxies, but they're not going to stay out of the power, because they know once this don't fight elections, they will be finished. So I think the government did try. So Apni Party came up. They were offshoots of PDP. Altaf Bukhari, who was in Mehbooba's movie, he formed a party. But then for a long time, it seemed that nothing has really happened. Sajad Lone, with People's Conference, who was a separatist before this, and then he tried to come into the mainstream. He tried to form a party, but then he also, comes from a separatist viewpoint. So he has not been able to make much inroads either. He was in alliance with PDP, and then he had moved out. So it was just running between 3 or 4 people, and then one didn't know what was going on till Ghulam Nabi Azad did what he did. And we'll talk about it in this thing, what Ghulam Nabi Azad's entry into J&K politics. He's not a political heavyweight, but his entry in politics is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. And we can talk about it as we go ahead. So that is the overview. That's where we are.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. So in terms of that, we've already matlab, touched upon like I guess what politics was before Article 370.
Mm.
Now, like let's get into a very specific thing. ये reorganization हुई है जम्मू एंड कश्मीर और लद्दाख के region की. So, has that reorganization had an impact of any sort as of now since the removal of Article 370 and obviously वो 35 जो था?
35, huge, huge. I think Article 370 ka removal, of course, it was a big thing for everyone and it is important. But reorganization of the state is even more, has far-reaching impact. And I'll tell you why. और कभी किसी ने सोचा नहीं था on the day that Article 370 was abrogated and 35A was finished off. I remember I had just traveled from India and truth movement had already started. Somebody from the press called me that morning and said कि कुछ हो रहा है कश्मीर में, आप क्या कह रही हैं होगा. तो मैंने कहा और सब कुछ हो सकता है बट आर्टिकल 370 तो नहीं जा सकता. दिस वाज मी 2 hours before Amit Shah announced it. And so I always tell people, take the political pundits say a lot, but always try to take it with a grain of salt. That is not to say that what I'm saying today they shouldn't listen, but they should. But I'm trying to tell you, hamari bhi limitations hain. So at that point, I thought it was not going to go, because it was such a psychological thing for me also, having been born and raised in Kashmir. I also had a psychological block. I said, no government will be able to do it. But then, of course, they did it. But what they also did was, which no one had thought, Article 370 की बात तो हम बहुत करते थे. Even I had talked about it. And there was something that we always knew at some point this should go away. But reorganization की बात नहीं करते थे. But reorganization was, I know the word master stroke is misused and abused and everything, but it was truly a master stroke. I wish I had a better way to say it. It was truly a game changer, if you will. Ladakh, for the longest time, had been completely sidelined. So Jammu and Kashmir people also, these days when I start my presentations in universities or educational institutions, I always tell people that you all have smartphones in front of you. Please open your phone and look at the map of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu Kashmir ki history jitni important hai, utni hi uske geography bhi hai. So when you look at the map of Jammu and Kashmir, you will know that for last 75 years, all we have been talking about is those little 4 districts in Kashmir Valley. And that has taken our, entire focus is on those 4 districts of Kashmir Valley, where there is what I call Sunni terrorism going on, Sunni-backed Islamist terrorism going on. But J&K is not that. J&K is there is a huge part of Ladakh, if you geographically look at the map, then the entire Jammu region, and all that we were not talking about. If you look at the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir and that game, it was a huge state. It was not just the valley. And somehow the valley had these 4 or 5 districts that had been infested by terrorism. They had taken everybody for a ride, and they had till now they still try to blackmail us as if the other people don't even matter. So what was happening? Another thing that people don't understand about Jammu and Kashmir, about the one thing is the geography and how Kashmir is a very small part of it. The other part is that most people think that Jammu and Kashmir is a Muslim-dominated area, and there are only Muslims there, which is true. It is a Muslim-dominated area, but then even amongst Muslims, J&K is a highly plural, multi-ethnic and multilingual entity. So the ethnic stock it's very important that people understand this, because when I talk about delimitation and everything, this will become important. The ethnic stock On the Indian, on our side of Jammu and Kashmir, not the side that has been illegally taken over by Pakistan, POK. We're talking about our Jammu and Kashmir. The ethnic stock of the Indian side is Dogras of Jammu, Punjabis who live in Jammu, Kashmiris, Gujjars, Bakarwals, Ladakhis, Baltis. This is principally, I mean, there are many more, but these are some ethnic identities that are there. And then in POK, you find Punjabis, Pathan, Balti, Dardi, Shin, Yashkun, Mongol, Tajik, Turkic, some other Central Asian extraction that is part of POK. But on the other side of in Pakistan, no ethnic Kashmiris live in Pakistan. It is very important for people to understand Pakistan. No ethnic Kashmiris live in Pakistan. In POK, I've told you who they live, the thing, and our side. So while we were forming policy for Jammu and Kashmir, all we were looking at was the ethnic makeup and the linguistic makeup of these four states. That is why in a state of Jammu and Kashmir, I've just told you how many languages and how many ethnicities are there. Tell me, Kushal, does it make sense to you that Urdu was made the state language of Jammu and Kashmir?
No, it clearly sounds like the Pakistan model being applied there.
Nobody speaks Urdu in Kashmir. Nobody. This is a fight that I'm fighting right now. Nobody speaks Urdu in Jammu and Kashmir. Even Muslims don't speak Urdu in Jammu and Kashmir. That language is as alien to them as Russian is alien to me. Yet, just because somebody thought in 1947 that this is a Muslim majority area, and therefore Urdu should be the state language. So these kind of things. Dogri was not given the attention that it should have been. Even Kashmiri was not given the attention. Then Muslims in Jammu and Kashmir are not just Muslims of Jammu Valley. Muslims live in Jammu region also. The Janab region and all that. You must have just seen that Ghulam Ali of Gujar community was just sent to Rajya Sabha on the president's nomination by by Narendra Modi government, and that is a huge thing. People outside Jammu and Kashmir might not understand, but the Gujar Bakarwal community, the SC/ST community, these are the scheduled tribes communities of Jammu and Kashmir, they were never given any representation. So it is not just my community of Kashmiri Pandits who were not given representation. We, of course, were never given any representation. But there are other minorities also who were never given any representation. People of POJK who had come in, Hindus from Pakistan who had come in, refugees of West Pakistan, they were never given any representation, even though they had made Kashmir home for 75 years. And then Valmiki Samaj, people who were brought from, Punjab at that time, in Maharaja's time, they were not given that dreaded state certificate, state subject, which determined that you were, remember, before Article 370 was abrogated, we all had dual citizenships. So we had a state subject, a certificate which told us that you are subject of J&K, and then of course we had Indian citizenship, and it was just nonsense. But even to get that state subject, in order to get a job in Jammu and Kashmir, you had to have that state subject. And those Valmiki Samaj and all these people who had made Kashmir home for Jammu, home for 75 years, they never had that state subject. They could not apply. They were not part of, they were not mainstreamed. There was no representations of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. None, zero. The progressive laws of Jammu and Kashmir, of India, that applied to India did not apply to Jammu and Kashmir. We all know that. So all that was going on. So I need people. You have a very discerning audience, and people who, the reason they are here is because they don't want to do that 30-second thing on primetime TV. So I want them to understand that Kashmir is not just a Muslim state. There are other identities there, the other ethnicities there, and all these ethnicities, they also need representation. It's not fair, it's not a democracy until all these people are given representation. So about the reorganize. So what happened was, coming back to reorganization, Ladakh was taken out, which was their long standing demand. I mean, Ladakhis need to be able to govern themselves. Why should somebody sitting in Srinagar govern Ladakh? Srinagar said, I mean, there is nothing in common. It's too far away. Even if you're traveling by road, it doesn't make sense. That why should the problems of Ladakh be solved by people in Srinagar or Jammu or even Delhi? So they needed their own union territory status. So this was a much pending demand. I'm glad they got it. So that went out, and then Jammu and Kashmir now stayed. So they are a unit, a union territory. What this did was, finally, for the first time, I think India or even Delhi awoke to the fact that the governance cannot be just from Kashmir prism. Just because वहां पे terrorism चल रहा है, that does not mean they will put a gun to your head and say, and you will keep pumping money in Kashmir, which is what used to happen before 2014. The status quo in all Jammu and Kashmir policy was maintaining status quo. Status quo का मतलब ये होता था कि somehow we have to keep Kashmir with us, so all that we'll do is we'll keep pumping money. So these used to be called financial packages. If you remember politics of J&K before 2019, all that used to be done, even Manmohan Singh's time, before that, financial packages signed hote the Kashmir ke liye. So this was a way to tell them, okay, we're giving you some more money now. Just calm down, calm down. We're giving you some more money. That is essentially what it was. So with the result, a lot of development, a lot of money went into the pockets of these people, but due to some public pressure, थोड़ी बहुत जो development होती थी वो सिर्फ कश्मीर में ही होती थी. Jammu stayed out of the development paradigm completely. So long before Jammu got the medical school, long before Jammu got engineering school, long before Jammu got any kind of other thing, Kashmir already had that. The development in Kashmir had already started because it was all Kashmir centric, reform, Kashmir centric development, Kashmir centric thing. So after 2014, and I look at Kashmir very, very carefully. The present dispensation, the present rule under LG Manoj Sinha, one thing I tell everyone, and when I see his tenure, I say you can blame him for a million things, but you have to give him credit for looking at Kashmir and Jammu with parity. Even during COVID, if you see how it was happened, if there were two oxygen tanks going to Kashmir, there were two oxygen tanks going to Jammu. If there was this going to Kashmir, there was two there. So it gave a sense of, semblance, some sense of parity. Of course, Jammu has been nursing grudge for last 75 years that we've been given stepmotherly treatment. That will not go away with just 2 years. That it will take a long time for them to come out of that, and it is a reasonable grudge. I do not hold it against them, but at least we have started this process now where we are thinking about Jammu. Another thing that has happened is, and we will talk about once we get to the delimitation part of it, and I will tell you how the seats have been distributed and everything. One thing that has happened is the politics for the first time in Jammu and Kashmir is now centered in Jammu. कश्मीर में थोड़ा बहुत freeze है, but जम्मू में there is a lot of ruffles going on, because somehow it seems that it is Jammu that will decide who will be the chief minister. It is Jammu who will decide that which party really gains. It's Jammu that will decide the narratives of the election when they happen. So Jammu has been brought into the forefront. So that is what has happened because of this reorganization. And that is why it was important that reorganization was done, so that Jammu also gets, feels that it is part of J&K and doesn't have to suffer for Kashmir's blackmail.
ओके सो अभी सेकंड सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट है कि ये डीलिमिटेशन, व्हाट इज दिस डीलिमिटेशन प्रोसेस, एंड ऑनेस्टली I don't know how to say it. Was it even necessary, and what is probably going to come out of this process?
Okay. So थोड़ा सा बैकग्राउंड देना जरूरी है कुशाल. What happened after Article 370? People thought that Article 370 ho gaya, but remember that was just a constitutional provision. Usko to hata diya. That those shackles went away. But after that, there had to be series of reforms that had to be done in order for Jammu and Kashmir to become part of mainstream India. And Article 370 was just the beginning of those reforms. What happens in India is that people just look at headlines and they don't have patience for everything that is going on. And governance, as you know, is not quote unquote sexy. Political reforms that have to be brought by a lot of effort and things, they don't get the headlines they really should be getting. But ever since Article 370 was abrogated, every single day in Jammu and Kashmir, things are changing. Things are being a tiny reforms, a big reform, a major reform. All these reforms are being, rolled out. Two major reforms that happened was right after Article 370 was domicile laws. I wrote a long essay about it, and I will send you the link. And if your viewers are interested, they can read that essay. But I will just give a brief sense of what those domicile laws were. The reason I'm telling you about domicile laws is because it's only then you will be able to understand what delimitation really was. So the a lot of people thought that new domicile law, it means that we are bringing 370 by back door. So a lot of criticism from the right, left se baat aayi hai, from the right also came to the government that they are bringing this domicile law. If you have opened Jammu and Kashmir for everybody, then why do you need this domicile law? So the point was, and what these people they sort of didn't understand at that point was that Jammu and Kashmir lived under the tyranny of that permanent resident certificate or state subject, that I was telling you a little while ago. These certificates were so hard to come by and they were required for everyone that the oppressive state bureaucracy made it so difficult that you had to grease so many palms, go through so many rounds of sifarish. I know because my mother did it to get one for me, that how hard it was to get. It was literally tyranny. And this process was totally out of reach for ordinary people. And then this PRC was also available only for natives of Jammu and Kashmir. The state, as we know, was shut out for outsiders. Now, Jammu and Kashmir domicile certificate, this domicile law, it corrects that historical law. So, one nation under one constitution ensures that anyone can live in Jammu and Kashmir and become a domicile. This is a question, this is a point that people forget. Before this domicile law, you could not, before abrogation of Article 370, if you were a Kashmiri, if you were a native Kashmiri, you were a native Kashmiri, that is all. But if you, kushalmehra, if you went to Kashmir and lived there for 25 years, you would still not become a domicile, you would not still not be part of the process there. But what this domicile was done, it increased the categories of people that can now become natives. So, what were these categories? So, besides erstwhile natives or who had the state subject, now anyone who had resided in J&K for 15 years and their children, any person who has studied in J&K for 7 years and appeared in 10th grade or 12th grade examination is now a domicile. Kashmiri Hindus who had officially become I wish that nomenclature also changes, but in the government, this thing migrants, but in reality, refugees in their own country, they were all granted domicile. Yes, they were all eligible for state subjects earlier too. They did have state subjects, but this new law opened doors for those who had migrated since 1944 to become domicile. So it increased the number of people, number of stakeholders in Kashmir. This is very important. Remember, before 1990 is not the only time. In our last podcast, we talked about the series of persecution, that it's a continual genocide, as we call it. So since 1944, people have been moving out from Kashmiri Hindus have been moving out. That is how we came to be a population of 2%. So this so now since 1944, people who had left, who did not have PRC or this state subject, they also became a domicile. It was fair to them because they also had roots in Kashmir. This corrected a historical burden. And then children of central government officials who had served in Jammu and Kashmir for 10 years were eligible for domicile. Again, what I was talking to you about, West Pakistan refugees, then Safai Karamcharis who had gone other parts of India, they were given the dignity of domicile, and then now they can climb the social ladder. Now they can participate in the political process. So then why was the criticism from the right happened कि आप तो you took out this domicile law, but then you also made a 15-year thing, 15-year clause there. Why 15 years? So I always tell them that it was for the benefit of those people who had just become, citizens of JNK, so to speak, domiciles. They said that you've just opened Kashmir to everyone, and if you open jobs, state jobs for everyone, we will also again become, we will again not have the priority. We've not had priority for 75 years, and now we will again not have the priority. So keep that 15-year clause so that we also come up, we also try to benefit from this for a few years. And then of course now it is not, you don't need a constitutional amendment. It can be changed anytime. It is a executive decision now. Anytime this 15-year thing can be changed. It can be made from 15. Every state has a domicile thing requirement, by the way. So you can make it anywhere between 15 years to 1 year or 2 years, depending on the government at that time it changed. What is important to understand is that you don't need a constitutional amendment now to do it, which was the important thing for before that. So once you have increased these categories now you have increased, all these people have come in. Now it was important. The next reform needed to be done, which was delimitation. So what is delimitation really? Delimitation is just, redrawing the electoral boundaries of assembly seats and Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha seats. So this was now that the state had been reorganized, new people had been brought into the electoral process. These people also had to be accounted in the population. So all this needed another kind of reform, which was a delimitation. Because what happened was after the Reorganization Act of 2019, this increased the number of seats in the assembly. So erstwhile J&K state had 101 seats, 46 in Kashmir, 37 in Jammu, 4 in Ladakh, and 24 seats were reserved for Pakistan occupied Kashmir, which is a symbolic thing. We don't use it. It is just a way to say that POK is part of India and we reserve these seats for them. Once POK, we're able to get them back, those 24 seats are for them. So this division, 46 in Kashmir, 37 in Jammu, this was done according to Jammu and Kashmir Representation of People Act 1957. After that, now 2019 happened. Delimitation Commission was set up on 6th March 2020. It was headed by a retired Supreme Court Justice Ranjana Prakash Desai. Then it had Chief Election Commissioner and J&K's Chief Electoral Officers as members. And J&K's 5 MPs were, including Farooq Abdullah, was made associate members. So everything was done in consultation with them. Now what has happened is the commission has increased. It has already been notified, so it is in process now. Commission has increased 7 assembly seats, 6 in Jammu. So now Jammu has 43 seats from, remember it had 37 earlier. So Jammu now has 43 seats, and Kashmir, which had 46 earlier, now has 47 seats. And it has also made massive changes in the structure of existing assembly seats. So there are 5 parliamentary constitutions in the region. So Delimitation Commission has seen the Jammu and Kashmir region as one single union territory. It does not think of Jammu as a separate unit and a Kashmir as a separate unit. Therefore, that is what has been kept in mind when it has redrawn the boundaries of two assembly seats, Anantnag and Jammu. So Jammu's Pir Panjal region that comprises Poonch and Rajouri district now, and the Jammu's region Poonch and Rajouri, which was part of Jammu in the Pir Panjal region, is now added to Anantnag seat in Kashmir. They have been able to do this, as I said, because they now look at union territory as one unit and not as two different units. Also, an interesting thing I just came across when I was reading, about the delimitation. The Shia-dominated region of Srinagar parliamentary constituency has been transferred to Baramulla constituency. Those who understand the fault lines of Jammu and Kashmir, those who understand that, remember when I talked about Sunni supported terrorism, they will understand why it was important that this Shia dominated region of Srinagar is also moved out, because they also need to have a voice. Then the commission has recommended, and it says, two members from the community of, and I am quoting from this, it says Kashmiri migrants. The word I completely detest, I hate. I hope it is changed. Nobody should be called a migrant. But I'm thinking that this is meant for Kashmiri Pandits. It does not say the word Pandits. It says Kashmiri migrants. So there is a lot of confusion about this, because Sikhs also moved out, and some Muslims may have also moved out because of terrorism. So when you say Kashmiri migrants, then is it really two members of Kashmiri Pandit society? The common understanding is that it is Kashmiri Pandits who will be, two members, two selected members. They don't have to go through the election as legislative assembly, but government hasn't given any clear understanding of what it is. I think when elections are finally announced, then we'll probably get, we'll understand what that means. Now scheduled tribes. So total 9 seats were reserved for scheduled tribes for the first time in Jammu and Kashmir. Understand that in Jammu and Kashmir, there were no seats ever reserved for scheduled tribes and scheduled castes. There were no reserved constituencies.
How secular and open-minded.
Exactly, very secular. Remember that, I keep saying that all progressive laws of India in the Indian constitution never applied to Jammu and Kashmir, and so-called liberals never said a word. That why is it that the progressive laws, whatever progressive laws we have in the constitution, why do they not apply to Jammu and Kashmir? They never answered that question. And that is why I always say that abrogation of Article 370 is a restoration of human rights and not taking away of human rights, because that is what, if you read Washington Post and New York Times, they will tell you कि तूफान आ गया and all, human rights, it's an infringement of human rights, but it is actually a restoration of human rights. So this delimitation was done on the basis of 2011 census, and which means that the way it is that 44% of the population in Jammu will vote for 48% of seats, and while 56% living in Kashmir will vote for remaining 52% seats. The reason this was done, usually delimitation is only done according to the population. But Jammu and Kashmir, known for its topography and known for its difficult terrain, that was also kept in mind. That people who live in far-flung areas, वहाँ पे population कम हो सकती है, but they also need representation. So that is why it was important that when you see a little this thing, somebody will tell you, oh, but there are more people in Kashmir. How come Jammu has more seats? But you also have to understand that population is not always the best thing to do delimitation in Jammu and Kashmir because of its topography, and everyone needs to have a representation. So that is your delimitation now. So it had to come in 3 stages. It had to come in domicile law, which I explained what it was. Then I explained to you what delimitation is. Next reform, according to what Home Minister had promised on the floor of Parliament that day, is restoration of statehood. The question always was, will the elections happen before restoration of statehood or after restoration of statehood? So this has been $1 million question that has been part of Jammu and Kashmir politics since 2019. Everyone was confused, although the government had always been clear about the chronology. They said we will do the domicile law, then we will do a delimitation, and which they've already done. Uske baad, we'll talk about statehood. Although election ka the timing is still nobody knows. My sense and my sources tell me that elections, and I can say it on your show today, that elections are not going to happen this year or next year. I think elections are going to happen in 2024. That is my sense, and I can put my word out there. I think elections are going to happen along with general elections somehow, and because it's going to take that much time for everything to get together. So my sense is elections will happen somewhere close to 2024, and statehood will be restored before that. That is my sense, but that is not what that is my assessment as a political analyst. It is not, obviously nobody has ever said anything about that.
I kind of understand where you're coming from, because let's be very real. I sometimes find it funny where people say बीजेपी इज प्लेइंग पॉलिटिक्स। अरे पॉलिटिकल पार्टी पॉलिटिक्स नहीं खेलेगी तो और क्या खेलेगी भैया? जैसे जैसे कि कांग्रेस और बाकी लोग पॉलिटिक्स नहीं खेलते, वो लोग तो ऐसे एकदम प्रिंसिपल्ड लोग हैं, ऐसे एकदम ऐसे करके घूमते। सो इट्स काइंड ऑफ फनी।
NGOs. They are
या
NGOs.
yeah, so obviously BJP is going to play politics, and expecting anything else out of the BJP is naive at best. And I 100% agree with you. They will try to milk this as much as possible. Okay, now about this latest fad or whatever it is, I don't understand. So how does Azad's re-entry into the state politics change anything? और मतलब क्या expect कर सकते हैं कि कुछ होने भी वाला है कि बस एक और आ गए हैं बस?
So Azad ka on face value, it seems more of same. So let me give you a bit of thing about Azad, because I've been watching television commentary after Azad resigned, and they've been saying the word they use is kadavar neta. And my joke was that if Azad is kadavar neta, I'm Helen of Troy. Honestly, I mean, um, at at best, Azad has been part of Congress from the beginning. I admit that. But he has really been associated with Sanjay Gandhi. He worked at the pleasure of Sanjay Gandhi, and after that, Indira Gandhi. So he was a family confidant. He was someone who benefited from his proximity to family. He was never a as people say, he never won elections on his own, really. He has never won an election in Jammu and Kashmir, by the way. Never. He stood for elections twice. He has never won elections in Jammu and Kashmir. Two state elections that he won were in Maharashtra. And वो भी जब कांग्रेस किसी को भी जितवा सकती थी. Those elections don't mean anything. So he is not really your grassroots neta. He's not that kind. What he is, but, and why this is significant is that Azad he's from Jammu region. Understand what that means. I have told you about the parity and everything. He's a Muslim from Jammu region. He is not from a valley. So valley Muslims, they might be okay with him and they might not say anything, but they're not very happy with him. They don't consider him one of his own. Azad is married to a Kashmiri Muslim woman from Valley, but he himself is from Doda. He's from the Jammu region. He became the chief minister once when Congress and PDP had an alliance. What goes in favor of Azad is that he is one of those people who work with personal goodwill, not because they have any great ideas in mind, or not because they want to disrupt the status quo, not because they have ever done anything like that, but they have personal goodwill. कि कुशाल को मैं जानता हूँ, and इसको मैं जानता हूँ, उसको मैं जानता हूँ. So you run with a nice goodwill.
Sounds like a typical Lutyens fellow.
You're a nice uncle sitting there. So that is how he ran the government. He does not offend anyone. He does not offend anyone. That is true. He has not offended anyone, but he has never done anything out of context also. I mean, out of box also, तो offending किसने होना था? If you're just existing there, you're not offending anyone. And he speaks nicely. He's not rude. He will not do any dog whistling, that to say. And he has never been close to jihadi elements. Kashmir ki problem ye rahi hai that all parties, all mainstream parties that have emanated from Kashmir, whether it is National Conference, whether it is PDP, of course, then People's Conference led by Sajad Bhai, whatever they tell you, they have always had some kind of association or some kind of conversation or some kind of understanding with Hurriyat and jihadis. I say this on record. PDP for sure, and PDP came into the wing. PDP, I always call PDP a political wing of jihadis. But National Conference also, they had, that's how they used to govern. There's no question. Azad, because he was never in Kashmir for most part of his life, and because he's from Dora, so there's a different mindset. So he has not been part of that jihadi nexus at all. In 2005, when he was sent by Sonia Gandhi to become the chief minister, he was a selected chief minister at that point. So he ran the government with goodwill. He made, he never offended anyone. But at the same time, he didn't do anything out of ordinary as well. But here is why I think all political parties, including BJP, they're kind of happy with Azad's entry there because they feel that Jammu Muslims will have somebody to rally behind. They don't necessarily, if they don't want to go with BJP, at least they have somebody to rally behind, which is not necessarily National Conference and PDP. Do you understand what I'm saying? When he forms the party, Jammu Muslims also have a representation. They have somebody to vote for. They don't necessarily have to vote for valley-based parties. So that automatically gets, narrows valley-based parties to the valley only. They don't have they will have a challenge outside. They will have a challenge because Jammu region, maybe there are only 4 Hindu dominated districts. Everything else is a fairly large Muslim population. So I think that changes. Second thing that changes is that the ordinary Jammu person is not very, they may not be the far right in Jammu. Far right has come up actually now. I do hear of this Ekjut party and all that, who talk about Jammu and separate statehood for Jammu and all that. So barring that constituency, the center in Jammu and Jammu city and all that, I mean, they might be open towards Azad's candidature because no one else is coming up. So this might change the equation. So how many seats Azad gets is not important. How many seats, how he divides the seats, that is important. So it's a wild card really that has been thrown out. And I think the reason he has been, nothing happens without, things don't conjure up in politics. You have to be very naive to understand that you wake up one day and you decide to do things. People think about their. Azad is 73 years old, and it's not just that he woke up one day and he said, "Acha, chalo Kashmir chalte hain, mausam acha hai." So he must have thought about this whole thing. I'm sure he had consultations, and I think his mandate is that he's already said that 370 cannot be. You cannot get 370 back. He announced it it's huge. He announced it in, I think it was in Anantnag in an assembly, where he said that I want to tell people of Jammu and Kashmir that, listen, 370 is not going to come back. We're not going to have it. We don't have the numbers for it. So now let us focus on other things. So that changes the narrative now. That changes the narrative. So that is because state-based parties have always said that we are fighting for 372. I mean, everybody knows that's not going to happen anymore. They will never have the numbers. But they've still been running that agenda. Now Azad comes and says, "Ki dekho, 370, I'm going to talk to you clearly. 370 is not going to happen. But we can fight for statehood, and we can fight for more representation and all that, whatever he talks about." So that is one huge change in narrative now in Kashmir. Another thing in Kashmir is that I think Farooq Abdullah has very good personal relationship with Azad. Don't be surprised if you see a government um, with National Conference and Azad. I don't know. I'm just telling you that combination is possible. PDP ke saath, I don't think Azad will go now because he has had bitter experience with them. He was with PDP when he was a Congress chief minister, and then the alliance broke off because Mufti Sayyid backed away after Amarnath agitation. So when I'm looking at it from the analyst point of view, I don't see. I see a possibility of Azad and National Conference coming together with Azad as chief minister. That is a possibility, and BJP as the single largest party in Kashmir. That is one possibility, because I do think that BJP state unit also has competition in Jammu now, because Azad, as I told you, is like this goodwill guy. People might just vote for him कि चलो कुछ अच्छा नहीं करेगा तो कुछ बुरा भी नहीं करेगा. And if I'm really upset with BJP right now, a Hindu constituency is upset with BJP now, they will say, okay, I'll go and vote for them. So BJP also has a challenge in Jammu, not in Kashmir, but in Jammu they have a challenge. So I keep saying that watch out for politics in Jammu this time, because that is what is going to determine where the next 5 years would be. But is Azad future of Jammu and Kashmir? No, because Azad is 73 years old. I have heard from reliable sources that he is not in the best of his health. He's doing well, but he is not in the best of his health. So I'm thinking this is a stopgap arrangement now. If he really does become the chief minister, it is for about 5 years, maybe. And after that, maybe that is the time everybody's thinking that maybe some new parties will come up or something will happen. But as of now, there are no new faces. There are old faces, and Azad has come up as a new face, as a new old face. So that's where our politics is right now in Jammu and Kashmir. But there's a high possibility of Azad coming as chief minister. Very high possibility of Azad coming in as chief minister.
ये भी हो सकता है बीजेपी और आज़ाद की अगर पार्टी को इनफ सीट्स मिल जाए साथ में सरकार बना ले, कुछ नहीं बोल सकते पॉलिटिक्स में. अगर पीडीपी के साथ जा सकती है बीजेपी तो इनके साथ क्यों नहीं जा सकती?
It's a politics of impossible. वो तो हो ही सकता है, but I think pre-poll alliance नहीं होगा. I
नहीं
don't
प्री
think
पोल तो
Azad will go with pre-poll alliance with BJP. That is
होगा.
not that is not on the cards. I don't think Azad will join BJP because that will be then that completely takes away the reason he is in Jammu and Kashmir. That will be a political suicide for him. He will not do that. Post election क्या होता है, we don't know. Depends on how well BJP does. But yes, that is on the cards. They can do an alliance, post-poll alliance. They can do, or they can do it with National Conference. We'll see. Depending on how they do in the election, we are still, as I said, I do not see elections happening before 2024. So there is a good 18 months.
Yeah, but you know what? It says a lot about Jammu and Kashmir politics, especially that no new leadership of any aplomb comes up. वही हमेशा rehashed, refurbished, old wine in a new bottle. हर time की is the story. But before we start taking audience questions, I think it's only fair that we talk a little bit about Jammu. Then what do you think is uh, Jammu in this entire picture? I mean, how do you think? Uh, how is the politics there different in the sense, I mean, obviously, I've had Manu come on the podcast and talk about how Jammu and the citizens of Jammu actually genuinely feel alienated at times because of the nauseating grip of Kashmir, and a very small region of Kashmir basically taking a disproportionate sense of attention when it comes to this entire political mishmash that exists over there. So what do you see the future of Jammu then?
Uh, Jammu is at a very interesting position today. Very interesting position. I think Jammu finally gets a say in the politics of Jammu and Kashmir. I mean, the day Azad went to Kashmir, Azad announced his. I wrote a huge thread on my Twitter. I said, watch out for Jammu, because Jammu mein real thawing of politics is happening, real defreeze is happening in Jammu. जम्मू में लास्ट 2-3 years में क्या हुआ है ना कि a far right party has come up. A far right constituency which always existed has come up. So there is this Ekjut Jammu that has come up, that is being led by Ankush Sharma. He is getting some traction. He talks about Dogar pride, he talks about Dogra pride, he talks about the erstwhile Maharaja of Kashmir. He looks back to that lineage and he says, listen, we are the erstwhile people of Jammu and Kashmir. We are the legacy of Maharaja. We need to get more respect. We need to have more say in the state politics. And there is a constituency that is kind of, liking that position. Now, this is the position that BJP usually used to take in Jammu. That Jammu needs to get the representation, but somehow because BJP has been in power and everything, so that little thing has been taken away by far right. So I see a tussle between far right and BJP. It could also happen that this far right completely dissolves in BJP. Don't rule that out for this election at least, because they don't have the, so they will act as a pressure point for a little bit and then they will dissolve in BJP. There's a very strong possibility of that happening. And then there will be NC and there will be Azad's party. So really the election in Jammu is going to be, PDP doesn't have much, I think it's going to get totally voted out in Jammu. So National Conference, believe it or not, still has some areas of influence. And then there will be Azad's new party, the name of which we do not know yet. And then there will be either BJP and this far right together, or fighting for the same piece of pie. But I think Jammu has finally reached a stage where it is forcing New Delhi to look at it, and where it's forcing New Delhi to say that you have to look at our aspirations as well, and that is how it is going to determine the next course of events. Don't be surprised if you see a Jammu based chief minister. I'm not saying a Hindu chief minister yet, but a chief minister from Jammu region, because Azad is from Jammu. He's not a Hindu, but he is there. And this may pave in way for the new delimitation and the thing. If it paves in a way for a new Hindu chief minister of Jammu and Kashmir later, I don't know. That is also a possibility. But the fulcrum of politics has moved from Kashmir to Jammu now.
Good. So this is naturally going to be my final question before I start taking the viewers' question. So what if I was to tell you to look at a crystal ball, metaphorically? So how's the future looking in your eyes? Will these elections, whenever they happen, and restoration of statehood bring about, do you think, any sense of political normalcy in the Jammu and Kashmir region?
Yes. See, what has been India's biggest stake on the global stage? Pakistan has never been able to say that the land piece of Kashmir that they illegally hold, that they do free and fair elections there, and they have not changed the demography of that state. They have changed. The demography of POK has been changed. Gilgit Baltistan has been taken away, and they've done all kinds of shenanigans there. So POK is not really happy with that. But what was India's big thing? That listen, we may have had hiccups in Kashmir, but by and large, I know there have been people, your audience, this is a discerning audience, and they know everything. They will talk about election rigging and all that. Yes, there have been many elections that have been rigged in Jammu and Kashmir, but by and large, we have had 3-4 elections that have been totally that no one, not even the detractors, not even the jihadis, can say that these elections were rigged. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when he did the election in Jammu and Kashmir, was a fairly free and fair election, which everyone said. Now, the recent 2 or 3 elections that have happened have also been free and fair, including the recently concluded those DDC, those local body elections. Even those, not one person has said, not even one person from JNK has said that these were rigged or these were things. So having conducting free and fair election, which is the basic thing of any democracy, has been a big thing for India. So it is very important that I think Narendra Modi, at one point, he does not want to leave office without an election in Jammu and Kashmir. I don't think he will do that. He really wants to. The man who is who thinks about his legacy and who thinks about future, I am sure he wants to have an election on his watch, a free and fair election on his watch, and that is what this is leading to. So future, I think, is bright for Jammu and Kashmir. Terrorism has gone. We haven't talked about terrorism today. That was not the mandate of this thing, but terrorism has gone down. What has the real problem, I will just touch on it really briefly, is that a new kind of problem has come up in security apparatus की जब हम बात करते हैं तो security level में ना एक अलग किस्म की problem आ गई है. Although terrorism numbers have gone down and we don't see as many people dying of, you don't see street violence anymore. That's important. You don't see street violence anymore. Even after 2019, you've not seen any stone pelting, for example. You've not seen any people engaging in fights on streets. You've not seen that. But what you have seen is the rise of lone wolf kind of attacks. And that is why these targeted attacks, and that's why you must have heard about Rahul Bhatt and all these Kashmiri Pandits and, people from minority communities or laborers who come to work in Kashmir, they have been attacked. So there is this lone wolf attack, which people are calling, which people who understand the security paradigm of Kashmir, they call it hybrid terrorism. So what happens is that they don't have proper terrorists on their regular terrorists don't carry out these attacks. Terrorists who live in jungles and don't live in this. These are regular people who live amongst people. And 16, 17-year-old boys, they give them pistols. They do the recce. They tell them exactly this person is working in this school. They go at this point, go shoot the person. And they shoot the person and they come back. That is the attacks that have happened. So इस वजह से थोड़ा डर अलग किस्म का डर है. Because you don't know if you're safe. You don't know if the person living in next home has been given the kid in the next home has been given a pistol to shoot you. You don't know that. So that security challenge exists, and that is why there is that. So that our army and the security is more than capable of handling it. It is a challenge right now, no question. But I think it will be handled sooner or later. So that challenge remains. But overall, as far as political process is concerned, I think once the elections happen and the noisy democracy returns, there'll be a lot of shuffling, there'll be a lot of talking, there'll be a lot of thing, but people will find their place. People will find their place. The only people who are going to have to work a little harder is Kashmiri Pandits, because I feel their voice still remains not heard, in the sense that they've been asking for further reorganization of Kashmir, a separate homeland, where they think as genocide victims they deserve to have what they call what Pan Kashmir calls, the nodal organization calls, geopolitical foothold in Kashmir, where from lower bureaucracy to the entire state machinery, it is being organized, it is being controlled by, nationalist forces, so to speak, and they will have something. So that question needs to be settled still. That how are we going to plan the rehabilitation of Kashmiri Pandits? But overall, I am an optimist and I see some very good things happening in Kashmir. I see India in a much stronger position than it has ever been on Kashmir, and I think challenges will remain, but we are in a strong position.
Fair enough. Okay, now I'm going to start taking 2, 3 questions here. So I'm going to start with this. I do not know. So this viewer is watching this. I do not know anything about Kashmiri politics. Can Sunanda ji recommend a book then from off after this podcast, which I can read about the whole political history of Kashmir since 1947.
Yeah. Yes, and I can. What I can do is there is a bunch of books. I can send it to you, Kushal, and then you can sort of put it up in your podcast or wherever you do, or I can put it up. I have a list somewhere that I always recommend to people that they should be reading. But one book everyone should read, and I recommend this right now, is. Jagmohan's My Frozen Turbulence. If you need to understand the politics of Jammu and Kashmir, if you need to understand the past and present of Jammu and Kashmir, please read My Frozen Turbulence of Jagmohan, the former governor of Jammu and Kashmir who passed away. He had a very strong sense of what was going in Kashmir, including its civilizational background and where it is and the present politics. He worked very closely with Mufti Mohammad Said and Farooq Abdullah. So he understands the psyche. So that is one book of the record I would say, please go ahead and read. My Frozen Turbulence by Jagmohan.
Fair enough. The next question is, I think, a question and exasperation, I guess, both. So the viewer says both BJP and Congress keep on stressing about bringing back POK to India, but based on my interactions with people from Muzaffarabad, Mirpur side, they're highly radicalized and believe in the same Islamism akin to their Pakistani counterparts. My question is, why should we run after a land infested with radical Islamists?
Fair question. This also is, first of all, India's position is that POK is our land. Pakistan literally stole it from us. I mean, during the 1947 war for Kashmir. So it is our land. A sovereign nation never ever gives up its exercise on the other land. We're not going to do that till the border situation. Remember, our borders are also not resolved. So we don't have an international border. There's LOC, which is in a state of, which is the current state line of control, which is what it's not an international border at the moment. So no sovereign nation ever gives up its right on its own land. It cannot do that. So no Indian government will ever say that we don't want POK back. I mean, it is a short recipe for political suicide. So no government will ever say that, because we do need, we're always going to say that. However, your question about it is radicalized and all, I am not so sure. This is not thing whether we should be taking over POK or not. I have no views on that at the moment, because I think India needs to solve a lot more issues before that. But whether they are completely radicalized or not, maybe Mirpuris and all that, that's a separate issue. I don't think all of them are particularly happy with Pakistan, really. I do see off and on, there's very little information, by the way, that comes out from POK. And you will never ever hear, as free and fair media is in our Kashmir, go and look at their Kashmir. Wahan se koi news nahi aati. It is very difficult to know what they ever do. But people who have uh, contacts there, former diplomats, and all these people who have come out there, they people are not very happy with what Pakistan has done to POK as well. So there is a lot of things. So maybe we can do a Bangladesh. I don't know. I'm just saying. Don't quote me on it.
To use Christian lingo, amen to that. Okay, so let's go to the next question now. Okay, the next question is again Kage, ha. The Article 370 and 35A was brought as per requests from then leftist and centrist Kashmiri Pandit leaders, as they feared Kashmir being overrun by Punjabis and people from Hindi belt. I don't know. This is a question, so I'm just reading it as it is. Your views on, in spite of having such a rich culture, why was there fear of such amongst the Kashmiri Pandit community back then, since you speak with those who grew up in Kashmir during the 60s?
I did not grow up in Kashmir in 60s. I was not born in 60s.
Yeah, how condescending. Shame on this person.
I know. So, but as an analyst, I do read about time that has come before me, and that I analyze on time that will come after me. Um, so you have to understand that elite of any community is always different. Their aspirations and what they do is always different from the rest of the community. So it is no different with Kashmiri Pandit elite as well. There was Lutyens elite that ran Kashmir, I mean India for so long. Were they not part of us? Of course, they were part of us, but their aspirations were different. Where they wanted to take the country was different. Yes, the elite at that time, a few elites, and you also forget that these were not just elites in Kashmir, they were also elites who were part of Indira Gandhi's kitchen cabinet at one point. Some very prominent Kashmiri Pandits. They had different aspirations. What is speaking for every single Kashmiri Pandit? No, they were not. And they were never elected members. First of all, you have to understand that nobody had elected them. So they were not representing anybody. What they were doing was representing themselves, and they had their own views and notions and what have you. But they were never a representative of the entire community. Also, you have to understand that Janasangh, despite Congress being a very important this thing there, Jansangh was also a very important, had made inroads in Kashmir. So that strand of thought also existed. And never forget, Sham Prasad Mukherjee died for Kashmir. Right?
Exactly.
So that strand also existed. So do Kashmiri Pandits of today feel more about with more kinship with Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee or these few elites that you talk about? No, they feel more kinship with Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee. So
Fair
that's
enough.
what
Okay.
we need to understand.
Yeah, this is a very important question, and I think often people don't talk about it. How does one deconflict the J&K economy? Because honestly, I believe a lot of things are downstream from economics. And the economy, the economic state of Jammu and Kashmir, whether people like it or not, is in shambles.
Absolutely. अब J&K में इंडस्ट्री क्या है इस वक्त except tourism, nothing else.
यार मेरा कजिन जम्मू में रहता है, मेरा तो इमीडिएट फैमिली जम्मू में रहती है, उनका जो बिजनेस था कश्मीर में उसका पूरा भट्टा बैठा हुआ है.
Yeah, yeah. So the industry really is terrorism. We've not been able to do much in Kashmir right now, and that is one of the things that this present government wants to do. They have been asking for investments. They want to bring investment in the valley and in Jammu. We are hoping big ticket businessmen can come in, but for that we need to have some as you say that everything is downstream from economy, but for a good economic thing you also need everything is downstream from politics as well, because unless politics sort of I'm not talking about the terrorism part of it, just the politics of it, unless that settles down we're not going to be able to see that. So I think that we need to have the electoral democracy restored. After that, when people go to elections and everything, and then they will have to tell people what they have done, uh, there will be interest in bringing industry to Kashmir. But as of now, it's totally in shambles. It is totally dependent on center and थोड़ा बहुत जो whatever comes from tourism, that's it.
Okay, one viewer has asked this question. ये last question है, interesting लगा मुझे.
Hmm.
So, what do you make of AAP? Do you see AAP making inroads in, in Kashmir more than वो क्या एकजुट Jammu? Do you think AAP might gain more, and then in that sense they might be also a spoiler for the opposition or other opposition parties?
You know, आपका बट्टा बैठ गया with Azad. AAP was making some inroads in Kashmir, I mean, not in Kashmir, in Jammu. AAP had started making some inroads in Jammu, and I was hearing these things that AAP is having some talk, and I saw big posters of Arvind Kejriwal in Jammu at one point, and I was like, "What's going on?" And they were trying to make inroads. See, AAP is going everywhere where Congress is in a precarious position because they want to get the Congress's foothold. They are not running for, like in Gujarat also, they are not running for government. They know that. They are trying to get the Congress's spot or the vote share of the Congress. In Gujarat, they're trying to do that. In Jammu also, they were trying to get Congress का अच्छा खासा vote share हुआ करता था before Congress completely dissolved now in Jammu and Kashmir, and they went with Azad. So they were trying to get that vote share that was erstwhile with Congress. But now with Azad's entry, that vote share is going to move with Azad because those people know Azad well. And Azad is also the son of the soil, so to speak. AAP does not have that kind of mind share in. They don't have any local leaders, so to speak. So I think AAP more than anybody, Azad's entry has dealt a death blow to AAP in Jammu right now. So I don't think AAP will survive after that. They will try. They will try to come later. But as of now, for the present election, I don't see. I would have seen AAP as a stakeholder, but not anymore. With Azad's entry, that has been taken care of.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So before we wrap up, Sunanda, any last words that you want to say before we wrap things up today?
No, thank you so much for inviting me, Kushal. It's always wonderful to talk to you because we go into this deep dive and we are able to talk about things that normally people shy away from. So it's always wonderful to be attacking the elephant in the room.
Thank, thanks for coming. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. So, guys, we'll wrap today's discussion up once again. What I'll do is I'll ask Sunanda to give me that book list. मैं
Yeah.
maybe वो book list लेके comments जो होंगे अपने ये YouTube के वीडियो के नीचे ही मैं comments में book list डाल दूंगा. So all of you who want to go and access that, you can go and read it. I'll add the comment over there itself. I'll try to pin the comment so it will become the first comment every time you come and watch this video over here. And as always, go and follow Sunanda on Twitter. In the description of the podcast, you'll see her Twitter handle. And वो क्या बोलते हैं उसको मक रैक या क्या बोलते हैं जिसमें सारे आर्टिकल मक रैक आते हैं. So I've added that too in the description too. And as far as I'm concerned, please subscribe to the Cārvāka podcast YouTube channel. Like this video. You can also support me on Spotify and iTunes. Become a member on Patreon, YouTube, buy the merch, donations on UPI. I will see you guys next time. Until then, take care. Bye bye.